My family excluded me for 10 years, called me selfish and worthless. Last week, I sent them a mysterious invitation to tour an exclusive mansion. When they arrived, they found me at the door, the daughter they threw away, now a millionaire. Subscribe now for this insane revenge story. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I learned 10 years ago that blood doesn't always run thicker than water. Sometimes it runs cold as ice. The notification chimed on my phone while I was reviewing blueprints for a client's kitchen renovation. A family group chat I'd forgotten I was still part of, probably because I never received messages from it anymore. My thumb hovered over the screen, and I felt that familiar knot form in my stomach. Hey everyone! Annual Martinez family reunion is set for August 15th at the community center. Can't wait to see you all. Please confirm attendance by Friday. Love you guys. Cousin Maria. I scrolled through the enthusiastic responses. Wouldn't miss it from my brother Danny. Looking forward to it from my sister Carmen. Heart emojis from various aunts and uncles. 23 family members confirming their attendance, sharing memories, discussing what dishes they'd bring. Not one of them mentioned my name. I set the phone down on my marble kitchen counter and stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens I'd spent years perfecting. The late afternoon sun cast golden shadows across the infinity pool, and the fountain my grandmother had always dreamed of installing sparkled in the distance. She would have loved to see what her little house had become. 10 years. 10 years since they'd gathered around this very kitchen table, back when it was a scratched wooden surface covered with a plastic tablecloth, and demanded I sell Grandma Rosa's house to save Danny's failing restaurant. Sarah, you're being selfish, my mother had said, her voice sharp with disappointment. Family comes first. This house is just wood and brick, but Danny's business is his life. It's not just wood and brick, Mom, I'd replied, my hands shaking as I gripped my coffee mug. It's Grandma's legacy. She left it to me for a reason. My father had slammed his fist on the table, making the sugar bowl jump. Your grandmother would roll over in her grave knowing you're letting your brother lose everything when you could help. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that I'd been working 3 jobs just to pay the property taxes and keep the lights on. They didn't know that I'd been eating ramen noodles for dinner most nights, or that I'd been sleeping on an air mattress because I couldn't afford a real bed. All they saw was a house they thought I didn't deserve. You always were the selfish one, Carmen had added, her words like daggers. Even as kids, you never wanted to share anything. The memories still stung, even after all these years. The way they'd all looked at me, like I was some kind of monster for refusing to sacrifice everything Grandma Rosa had worked for. The way they'd filed out of the house one by one, leaving me sitting alone at that scratched table. That was the last time most of them had spoken to me. I picked up my phone again and read through the reunion messages once more. They were planning games, a potluck dinner, a slideshow of family memories. They were planning to celebrate their bond, their unity, their love for each other, without me. A bitter laugh escaped my lips as I walked through my home, the same home they'd wanted me to sell. The modest 2-bedroom house had been transformed into a stunning 4,000 square foot showcase. The cramped living room where we'd held that terrible confrontation was now an open concept great room with vaulted ceilings and a stone fireplace. The tiny kitchen became a gourmet chef's paradise with custom cabinetry and professional-grade appliances. Every room told the story of my success, my growth, my ability to thrive without their approval or support. My interior design business had taken off 3 years ago, and this house was become my calling card, the property that convinced wealthy clients I could transform their stasis into something extraordinary. I paused in front of the family photo that still sat on my mantelpiece, the last picture we'd all taken together at Christmas 11 years ago. We looked so happy, so united. I looked so naive. The community center where they were planning their reunion was less than 5 miles from here. They'd be gathering just down the road from the house they'd once demanded I abandon, celebrating their family bond while deliberately excluding the person who chose to honor our grandmother's memory. I set the photo face down and walked back to my phone. My fingers moved across the screen before I could second-guess myself, typing a response to the group chat. "Sounds wonderful. Hope you all have a great time." I hit send and immediately left the group. It was time to show them exactly what they'd chosen to exclude themselves from. The next morning, I drove past the community center on my way to a client meeting. The parking lot was already buzzing with activity. Folding tables being carried inside, colorful streamers being hung from the entrance, children running around while adults shouted directions at each other. The Martinez family reunion was in full swing. I slowed my BMW to get a better look, my tinted windows providing the perfect cover. There was Danny, my older brother, directing traffic with the same bossy attitude he'd had since childhood. His hair was thinner now, and I could see the stress lines etched around his eyes even from this distance. His restaurant had closed 6 months after our confrontation, and from what I'd gathered through mutual acquaintances, he'd been struggling to find steady work ever since. Carmen emerged from a minivan loaded with casserole dishes, her 3 kids trailing behind her. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from working 2 jobs while raising children on a tight budget. Her husband had left her 2 years ago, leaving her to manage everything alone. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting relatives with forced smiles. Dad's shoulders were more stooped than I remembered, and Mom's hair had gone completely gray. They'd mortgaged their house to help Danny with his restaurant debts, and I knew they were still struggling to make payments. As I watched them, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd made their choice, and the consequences had followed. But another part, a smaller part I tried to ignore, felt a pang of sadness for what we'd all lost. I pressed the accelerator and drove away before anyone could notice my car. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by design portfolios and client testimonials. The walls were lined with awards from the American Society of Interior Designers, magazine features showcasing my work, and photographs of the luxury homes I transformed. This room alone was worth more than my parents' entire house. My laptop chimed with a new email from a potential client, a tech executive who wanted me to design his Malibu beach house. The project would be worth more than Danny's restaurant had ever made in profit. I smiled and began drafting my response. But my concentration was broken by the sound of cars pulling into driveways, laughter carrying on the evening breeze, and the distant hum of families reuniting after a day of celebration. The Martinez reunion was ending, and everyone was heading home, full of good food and warm memories. Everyone except me. I closed my laptop and walked out onto my terrace, where the outdoor kitchen I'd installed last year gleamed under the landscape lighting. The infinity pool reflected the stars, and the fountain played its gentle melody. It was beautiful, peaceful, perfect, and completely empty. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through social media, knowing I shouldn't, but unable to stop myself. The reunion photos were already being posted. Group shots of smiling faces, candid moments of cousins catching up, pictures of the kids playing games. The hashtag Martinez Family Reunion 2024 was trending among our relatives. In every single photo, there was a space where I should have been, an invisible gap in the family circle that no one seemed to notice or acknowledge. But I noticed.
I noticed that Aunt Rosa, my grandmother's sister, looked frailer than ever. I noticed that my cousin Miguel's youngest daughter had grown tall and beautiful, and I'd missed watching her transform from the little girl I remembered. I noticed that Uncle Carlos had finally gotten the hearing aids he'd needed for years. I'd missed it all. By choice, yes, but I'd still missed it. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant, Rebecca. "The Henderson Project photos are ready for your approval. They turned out amazing. You're going to love them." I set the phone aside without responding. Success was supposed to feel better than this. That night, I lay in my king-sized bed with its custom headboard and Egyptian cotton sheets, staring up at the coffered ceiling I'd designed myself. The house was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of the fountain. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine what would have happened if I'd made a different choice 10 years ago. What if I'd sold the house and given Danny the money? Would his restaurant have succeeded? Would we still be a family? But then I remembered the look in their eyes. Not love or concern, but entitlement and greed. They hadn't asked me to help, they'd demanded it. They hadn't considered my feelings or my struggles, they'd only seen what they wanted to take. I turned over and pulled the covers up to my chin. Tomorrow, I would put my plan into motion. It was time for my family to see exactly what they'd thrown away when they chose money over loyalty, pride over love. It was time for them to understand that their exclusion had been my liberation. The invitation I was about to send would change everything.
I spent the next 3 days crafting the perfect invitation. Not the kind of casual text message or Facebook event they were used to, but something that would command attention and spark curiosity. The invitations were printed on thick, cream-colored cardstock with elegant gold foil lettering. I'd used the same printer who handled wedding invitations for my wealthiest clients. Each envelope was addressed by hand in calligraphy, sealed with a wax stamp bearing an ornate M for Martinez. The message was simple but intriguing. You are cordially invited to an exclusive private tour of the most remarkable estate transformation in the county. This architectural masterpiece represents 10 years of vision, dedication, and artistic achievement. Tour begins at 2 p.m. this Saturday. Light refreshments will be served. Please RSVP to confirm your attendance. Address 1247 Rosewood Lane. I deliberately omitted my name from the invitation, signing it only as your host. Most of them wouldn't immediately recognize Grandma Rosa's old address. It had been 10 years after all, and the property looked nothing like what they remembered. Rebecca helped me deliver the invitations personally, slipping them into mailboxes throughout the neighborhood where most of my family still lived. We drove through the familiar streets in my BMW, past the small houses with their chain-link fences and overgrown yards, past the corner store where I used to buy penny candy as a child. "Are you sure about this, Sarah?" Rebecca asked as we pulled away from my parents' house. "This feels like it could get messy." I adjusted my rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of my mother through the front window, already examining the elegant envelope with curiosity. Sometimes messy is necessary. Sometimes people need to see the truth with their own eyes. By Thursday evening, my phone was buzzing with responses. The family group chat I'd left had apparently been revived with speculation about the mysterious invitation. Danny had texted me directly, "Sarah, did you get one of these weird invitations? Someone's trying to show off their fancy house. Probably some rich snob who moved into the neighborhood." I smiled as I typed back, "I got one too. Sounds interesting. Are you going?" "Carmen thinks we should check it out.
Free food, right? And maybe we can see how the other half lives. My sister had also reached out. This invitation is gorgeous. Whoever sent it has serious money. I'm dying to see inside this place. Want to carpool? One by one, they all confirmed their attendance. My parents, my siblings, my aunts and uncles, even some of the cousins who'd driven in from out of town and extended their stay. The mysterious invitation had accomplished what years of family guilt trips couldn't. It had united them in their curiosity. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. The August sun cast everything in golden light, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I'd spent the previous day making final preparations, arranging for catering from the city's most exclusive restaurant, setting up a sound system for background music, and ensuring every detail of my home was absolutely perfect. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, choosing my outfit carefully. Not too flashy. I didn't want to appear like I was trying too hard, but not too casual either. I settled on a flowing white sundress that I'd bought in Italy last spring, paired with delicate gold jewelry and nude heels. My hair was styled in loose waves, and my makeup was natural but polished. I looked successful, confident, happy. I looked like everything they'd told me I'd never become. At 1:45 p.m., I positioned myself in the great room where I could see the circular driveway through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The catering staff had arranged elegant appetizers on silver platters, and soft jazz played through the hidden speakers. Everything was ready. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, choosing my outfit carefully. Not too flashy. I didn't want to appear like I was trying too hard, but not too casual either. I settled on a flowing white sundress that I'd bought in Italy last spring, paired with delicate gold jewelry and nude heels. I looked successful, confident, happy. I looked like everything they'd told me I'd never become. At 1:45 p.m., I positioned myself in the great room where I could see the circular driveway through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The catering staff had arranged elegant appetizers on silver platters, and soft jazz played through the hidden speakers. Everything was ready. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, choosing my outfit carefully. Not too flashy. I didn't want to appear like I was trying too hard, but not too casual either. I settled on a flowing white sundress that I'd bought in Italy last spring, paired with delicate gold jewelry and nude feels. I looked successful, confident, happy. I looked like everything they'd told me I'd never become. At 1:45 p.m., I positioned myself in the great room where I could see the circular driveway through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The catering staff had arranged elegant appetizers on silver platters, and soft jazz played through the hidden speakers. The first car pulled up at exactly 2 p.m. Danny's beat-up Honda Civic looked painfully out of place against the backdrop of my fountain, the perfectly trimmed hedges, the stone pathway that led to my front door. Carmen's minidan followed close behind, and then my parents' old Ford sedan. One by one, they emerged from their vehicles, their faces reflecting the same expression of shock and confusion. They stood clustered together in my driveway, looking up at the house they'd once known as Grandma Rose's modest two-bedroom home. The transformation was so complete that I could see them questioning whether they'd come to the right address. "This can't be the same place," I heard my mother whisper to my father. "The address matches," he replied, pulling the invitation from his pocket to double-check. I watched them approach my front door, their steps hesitant and uncertain. When the doorbell chimed, I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and walked to greet them. It was time to show them exactly what they'd lost when they chose to exclude me from their lives. I reached for the handle and pulled open the door, stepping into the light, where they could see me clearly. Their faces turned pale, just as I'd imagined they would. The silence stretched between us like a chasm.
23 members of my family stood frozen on my doorstep, their faces cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked almost like fear. My mother was the first to find her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Sarah?" "Hello, Mom," I said, my tone warm but controlled. "Thank you all for coming. Please, come in." I stepped aside and gestured toward the foyer, where the crystal chandelier I'd imported from Venice cast rainbow patterns across the marble floors. They filed in slowly, like tourists entering a museum, their eyes darting everywhere at once. Danny stopped just inside the doorway, his face pale. This is Grandma's house?" "It was," I replied simply. "Welcome to what it became." I led them through the great room, watching their reactions as they took in the soaring ceilings, the custom millwork, the original artwork I'd collected over the years. The space where we'd once crowded around Grandma's small television to watch holiday movies now housed a state-of-the-art entertainment system and a seating area that could accommodate 30 people comfortably. Carmen reached out to touch the marble fireplace around, then pulled her hand back as if she'd been burned. When did you? "It's taken 10 years, I said, moving toward the kitchen where the catering staff had arranged the refreshments. "Would anyone like something to drink? I have champagne, wine, sparkling water." My father cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the vast space. "Sarah, we had no idea that you had money," I finished for him, pouring myself a glass of champagne. "Success? The ability to honor Grandma Rosa's memory while building something beautiful?" I took a sip and met his eyes. "No, I don't suppose you did." The family spread out through the room, touching surfaces with reverent fingers, whispering among themselves. I could hear fragments of their conversations. "The kitchen alone must have cost more than my house. Is that a Monet on the wall? The pool outside is bigger than my entire backyard." Aunt Rosa, my grandmother's sister, approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mija, your grandmother would be so proud. This is exactly what she dreamed this place could become." "I know," I said softly. "She used to sit on the back porch and described the fountain she wanted to install, the garden she wanted to plant. I made sure to include every detail she ever mentioned." "But how?" Danny stepped forward, his voice strained. "How did you afford all this? The restaurant failed because there wasn't enough money. You said you couldn't help because you were broke." "That's not fair," Carmen interjected, her voice rising. "We were family. We needed help." "Were we?" I asked quietly. "Because family doesn't abandon each other when they make difficult decisions. Family doesn't cut someone out of their lives for 10 years because they won't sacrifice everything they have." The room fell silent, except for the soft jazz playing overhead. My mother stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. "Sarah, we were so angry. We thought you were being selfish." "I was being smart," I replied. "I kept the house, worked my way through design school at night, built a business from nothing. This house became my showcase, my proof of concept. Every client who walked through that door saw what I could do with vision and dedication." I moved toward the sliding glass doors that led to the terrace. "Would you like to see the rest?" They followed me outside, where the infinity pool reflected the afternoon sun and the fountain played its gentle melody. The outdoor kitchen was set up with additional refreshments, and the gardens stretched out beyond, showcasing 10 years of careful cultivation. The business I built from this foundation now employs 12 people, I continued, my voice carrying across the space. "I've designed homes for celebrities, tech executives, politicians.
Last month, Architectural Digest featured my work on their cover. I turned to face them, seeing my success reflected in their stunned expressions. The money you thought I should give up to save Danny's restaurant, it was never really mine to give. It was an investment in a future that none of you believed I could achieve. Uncle Carlos, who had barely spoken to me in years, stepped forward. But we're family, Sarah. Family forgives. Family moves on. Does it? I asked. Because for 10 years, I've been excluded from every birthday, every holiday, every celebration. I've watched from the sidelines as you all gathered together, posted photos, shared memories. You moved on all right. You moved on without me. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of truth. I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the understanding that their actions had consequences, that their choices had shaped this moment. I didn't invite you here for an apology, I said finally. I invited you here so you could see what you missed, what you chose to exclude yourselves from when you decided that money was more important than understanding, that pride was more valuable than patience. My mother stepped forward, reaching out as if to touch my arm, then letting her hand fall. Is there a way to fix this? I looked around at the faces of the people who had once been my world. Some showed genuine remorse, others still seemed defensive, and a few appeared lost in their own regret. I've built a good life, I said softly. I have friends who became my chosen family, colleagues who respect my work, a community that values what I contribute. I walked back toward the house, pausing at the threshold. Thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed seeing what Grandma Rosa's house became, what it was always meant to become. As they slowly filed past me toward their cars, some mumbling awkward goodbyes, others too stunned to speak, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Danny was the last to leave. He stopped in front of me, his eyes filled with something that might have been understanding. I'm sorry, Sarah, he said quietly. We were wrong about everything. I know, I nodded, not trusting my voice to remain steady. After the last car pulled away, I stood alone in my beautiful home, surrounded by everything I'd built from their rejection. The late afternoon sun streamed through my windows, casting golden light across the marble floors. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt completely at peace. I had shown them what they'd lost. Now, I could finally let go of needing them to understand it. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. How did it go? I smiled as I typed back. It went exactly as it needed to. Outside, the fountain continued to play its gentle melody, and the gardens I'd planted in Grandma Rosa's memory swayed in the evening breeze. This house had been her dream, but it had become my triumphs. Not over her family, but over the limitations they'd tried to place on my life.